Hello and welcome to State Listings Inc., the home of My State MLS and New York State MLS. My name is Dave, and thank you for joining us with our first episode of our Generations RE series, where we're going to be taking a look at the different generations that are currently buying houses, selling houses, or moving to a new home. And today we're taking a look at our first generation today, which is Generation Z. So without further ado, let's get things started and ask the question, who are Generation Z? They're often confused or mixed up with millennials, but they are not millennials. We consider both Generation Z and millennials young adults. And while I would not consider myself one, the oldest millennials are actually nearing 40, which also I don't want to think about as either myself. But really, Gen Z is the generation that was born between 1997 and the early 2010s. Most studies putting it around 2012, which that means the youngest Gen Zers are actually still in school, and they're between the ages of 8 and 25. So we've got a very wide range for Gen Zs. Of course, those still in elementary school are not going to be buying houses right now. So we're looking at those older Gen Zers who are now in their young to mid 20s, getting ready to make that first time purchase of their home. And what you as a real estate professional, as an agent, as a broker, should keep in mind when it comes to starting to work with the youngest generation of home buyers and what they're looking for and how they're very different from other generations that we've seen in the past. So let's keep going and think about what makes Gen Z different. Well, really, they grew up with technology. Again, we're looking at people that are from the mid 90s to the early 2010s, again, between the ages of 8 and 25. So they grew up with computers, video games, the internet. Let's think about it. The first iPhone came out in 2007. So the youngest Gen Zs grew up, were born with smartphones. So they've had tiny screens in front of their faces pretty much since birth. The PlayStation 2 just celebrated 20 years since its release this week. So video games been a prominent aspect of Gen Z's lives. And of course, they grew up using the internet with home PCs hitting their peaks in the lower 2000s. And then, of course, as we just mentioned before, smartphones making their big debut in the 2008, 2007 era. Gen Z is very, very avid when it comes to their mobile devices, their smartphones, their tablets, their iPads, their Androids. So they know every facet of technology. So you as a real estate agent and working with Gen Z also need to make sure that you are practical with today's devices and of course the internet and how this youngest generation of home buyers are doing their shopping, and of course that is on the internet. And of course we all know that 98% of home buyers, regardless of their generation, is doing their own home buying searches. So you have to just make sure that you have that online presence when it comes to marketing yourself, any listings that you have available. And we'll get to that in just a little bit as well. So what also makes Gen Z different? Well, they're practical spenders. Well, they grew up during a recession. Think about 2007 is the last recession that we have. So they may have more conservative spending habits. They may be more aware of their spending habits. They're trying to always find the best deal. Again, looking at how the internet has really changed things. Even with my own personal shopping, and I'm sure you do it as well. When you go and you buy something online, you're probably searching before you go anywhere. Even when you're at a store, you pull out your phone and you go to Amazon.com, or you just go to Walmart or Target.com just to see what the price is of that item that you're looking at, see how it's priced on different sites. Can you get it cheaper someplace else? That's what Gen Z is doing, not only for products that they buy every day, but they could even be doing it with their home searches as well, trying to find that best house at the best price possible. And they're going to be more aware of their spending habits. They're also not your typical 9-to-5er. Jobs have changed drastically in the past 10 or 20 years. There are a lot of jobs today that didn't exist, a decade or two ago. Especially with the boom of social media, the internet, Gen Z has found ways to create new jobs or sources of income better than anyone else has ever been able to do. Think about it. Now you can have a YouTube channel or become what's called a social influencer, and you can end up creating essentially a massive conglomerate for yourself where people who started making videos on YouTube for their family and friends end up with book deals or makeup lines or toy lines. And these type of things that we have available now didn't exist before. So Gen Z, they're not your typical 9-to-5er. They may not have a regular office job. They're taking alternative career paths. They may not be just going to college anymore and getting typical education. They may be taking on trades. They may be getting different jobs and taking on freelance positions. Also, with the boom of being able to work remotely and working virtually and not having to go to an office, this really opens up the availability as to where a potential buyer is going to buy their home. So Gen Z really can open up their horizons, and they may not have to find a house that's within 15, 20 minutes of the office anymore, because they can get a job that's remote. They can work out of their home office. They can work in the dining room table, and they can find this job, which means they're not locked into having to buy a house within a certain area. And you, as their broker, as their agent, should really keep that in mind and help them find a home that suits their needs, maybe offer the ability and thinking on a bigger picture that maybe they can move outside of where they may have originally thought. We all know that buying a home is one of the largest, if not the largest, financial decision a person can make. So how does Gen Z feel about buying a home? Well, like most of us, they all hope to buy a home and have that first home by a certain age. For Gen Z, they're actually hoping to buy their first home by 35, but they're always thinking financially. Again, going back to what we mentioned before, they are very aware of their spending habits, they're conscious about it, and they are trying to make sure that they are making smart decisions when it comes to spending their money. So they're thinking about those down payments, they're thinking about closing costs. But there's one question, and one very big question, that they're always asking, and that's going to be, am I making enough? Now, are they going to have that down payment? Are they going to be able to afford their mortgage? Are they going to be able to afford all of the other payments that come into play? Student loans, cell phone bills, cable bills, just gas bills, just different bills that they have to pay on a regular monthly basis. Are they going to be able to balance all of those things combined after purchasing a home? So what I did is I pulled up this quick graphic here. Here we can see this kind of breaks things down into generations dating back to the 1970s as to how old people were, the median age for people buying their home, and that average price. And it's easy to see why Gen Z may be worried about paying for that first time home, where we can see, again, this is slightly older data going back to 2013 when Gen Z was just being born, but we can see that the median price at the time for a home was about $140,000, which is up over the years. We can see in the 1970s it was $87,000, and of course gradually increasing over the 3 or 4 decades, whereas the median income has been hovering in the 50,000 range that entire time. So we're seeing that the price of homes is going up while unfortunately salary is kind of remaining the same. So it's understandable why Gen Z is going to be very conscious and aware of their spending habits when we just take a look at this graphic here, being able to see how much money they have and whether or not they can make those down payments on a house that is only going up in value. So let's talk about Gen Z and you. Again, you're going to be that real estate professional that they're going to need in order to go ahead and purchase a house. So what does Gen Z want in a real estate agent? Well, they're going to want someone, of course, that understands their needs. They're going to want to know what they want. Of course, they're going to want to find someone that has knowledge in the market and, of course, experience. Very similar to what you would see across the board with any home buyer. But Gen Z, of course, is going to be very different than what you've dealt with in the past with previous generations. So what you've got to do is you've got to remember to listen. Generation Z, again, is the most diverse, either in background, spending habits, education. There's going to be a wide range in different scenarios when it comes to your Gen Z buyer. So it's going to be very important that you listen to them, listen to their specific needs, and of course, don't make assumptions as to what they're looking for. And what I mean by making assumptions is, again, we all know that home buyers are going to want someone that understands their needs, understands the market, and has experience. But everyone is going to have different needs about purchasing a home. Not everyone today is going to want a pool in the backyard, where again, 10, 20 years ago, that was one of the biggest wants. When someone was purchasing a home, they wanted to make sure that had a pool. But again, Gen Z now thinking about more than just one financial aspect of it and thinking, oh, well, I'm also going to have to maintain that pool. I'm going to have to buy chemicals every summer. I may have to replace the liner in 5 to 10 years. I may have to replace the pump for that pool, or maybe it's a heated pool. I have to replace that heater. They're just thinking about all these additional costs. So just because that people used to want a pool doesn't mean that Gen Z wants pools now. Maybe they want something different. Maybe they want to make sure the house is going to be compatible with solar panels. Maybe it's already fitted for solar panels. So there's a lot of things that they're going to be looking at that you may not have thought about before when working with previous generations. So what can you do? Well, you're going to want to address their concerns. So again, you're going to be asking questions and finding out what their concerns are when it comes to making that purchase. We talked about it before, is their big question is, am I going to have enough money to buy this house? Am I going to be able to make those down payments? Am I going to be able to afford my mortgage every year? And of course, there are financial assistance options out there. So it's good to educate your clients about those options with them. So maybe buying isn't in the cards for them right now. So maybe you can then go through the differences of buying versus renting. Because what we want to think about is having this customer for the long run. And we're going to go into that in just a little bit. So again, just when we're working with our Gen Z customers, is making sure we're asking questions, we're addressing their concerns, letting them know whether they are ready to buy. And if not, don't turn them away. Still keep them as a customer, because again, they may not be buying a house today, but 6 months, 1 year, even 2 years down the road, it's still good for you to maintain that relationship with them, because they're going to remember you and say, oh, I remember talking with them, and they're the ones that really convinced me that I should just stay in my apartment for another 6 months while I get my finances together and get ready to purchase that home. And we're going to go into that in just a little bit. So what you're going to want to do is make sure they're prepared for what is entailed when buying a home. We already talked about their big worry is being able to afford it. They know that they may have to put 20% down for a down payment, but they may not be thinking about the other stuff that goes on when it comes to purchasing that home. I know when I purchased my home at a younger age, I completely forgot that closing costs were a thing that I had to somewhat pay for. And I know that a lot of buyers are not aware of these additional hidden fees that also go into purchasing a home as well. So you have to make sure that these younger buyers are aware of these fees. And again, we talked about before buying versus renting. As we go through that list, let's just weigh the pros and cons of both. Think about the pros of buying versus the pros and cons of renting. Again, buying, you're paying into something. Your mortgage rates are going to something. Whereas with a con in rental is you're making payments to stay in a house that you're going to one day move out of. It's not yours. So always weigh those pros and cons of renting versus buying. And as we said, are they financially ready? Well, this is where we're going to talk about presenting them some financial assistance options and nurturing your buyer into maintaining that relationship and keeping them for the long run. So as we said, there are financial assistance options out there. One of them is that first-time homebuyers club. If your buyer isn't familiar with this, make sure you bring it up with them. If you're not familiar about it, make sure you go ahead and look it up. Lots of different banks, credit unions have these types of clubs, and how it works is you'll open up a savings account, a bank account with the institution. You'll start putting money into it each month, and then what will happen is that bank will also match that contribution or add a percentage of that contribution into that same account for that money to be used towards the closing costs or the down payment of a home. I was doing some research before we started today, and I saw a bank. They said for every $4 that you put into the account, that bank puts in $1. So as you go ahead and you start putting in your money into this account, the bank also starts putting it in because you're going to be using that bank for your loan. They're going to also contribute to those closing costs, those down payments. Typically, they have a 10 to 24 month maturity period. You contribute it to that account for 10 months, 24 months. And then once that account reaches maturity, that money can then be used towards a down payment. So again, if your customer isn't familiar with these types of programs, help them set it up. Even meet them at the bank. Tell them, get some contacts at the banks. Find a financial expert at your local branch bank and say, hey, I'd like to be able to refer my younger customers to you to help set up, first-time home buyers accounts with you. They'll give you cards, they'll pass along information. You can then share that information with your Gen Z customers, your Gen Z clients, and they can go ahead and set up these first-time homebuyer accounts so they can start putting money away for that down payment, for those closing costs. Let's say they create an account and it's a 24-month maturity. So which means at 24 months, they'll say they'll have $20,000 in the account. That's going to be able to go towards their closing costs, their down payment. We can say is, all right, just keep doing that. And then what we'll do is we'll start getting together about 20 months out. So that way we can start doing searches. And then once the account reaches its maturity date, you can start pulling the money out and you can put it towards a down payment. We've been searching for homes and we're ready to buy. Again, nurture your buyers. These younger buyers, again, they may not be ready to buy immediately, but just because they're not ready to pull the trigger and buy a home immediately doesn't mean you should let them fall by the wayside. You shouldn't ignore them because, again, this is the younger generation, the youngest generation of buyers. And what that means, they may just buy one house from you, but again, their family could grow. They're going to have to upgrade to a different house. So that's another house that you might help them buy. They have another kid. They need to move again. They're going to switch school districts. They could be purchasing and selling homes 2 to 3, even 4 times through your entire relationship with them. So you could always go through upgrading their house, getting a bigger house. Who knows? Even they may get ready to retire and they say, we need to downsize now, get a smaller house. You're still working with them after all of these years. Always keep them under your wing. Guide them through their entire journey of home ownership. So how can you help? Well, you're going to want to make sure you're available. Gen Z, like we said before, is very in tune with technology. They're very in tune with social media. They're attached to their cell phones. So always be available, whether it's online, via email, or your cell phone. Just make sure you're available. We're not saying that you have to answer texts at 2 a.m., but be able to accept those messages from them so you can respond to them in a timely manner. Of course, having an online presence is also going to be very, very important, whether it's social media, you're going to have a Facebook page, you're going to have a Twitter, or you just have a very basic website. All of this stuff, very important when it comes to working with your Gen Z customer. Again, you don't have to be answering texts at 2 a.m., but just having a way for them to contact you is going to be very important because Gen Z, again, they're not regular 9-to-5ers. They may be working offset hours. They may be working overnights. They're doing home searches late at night because they can't fall asleep. And they may send you a message saying, hey, I just found this house online. I'd love to go see it. Make sure you're always available to your customer. And again, having social media presence is always going to be great as well. If you've got a Facebook page for your business, by all means, make sure everyone's liking that. Go ahead and try to not only post listings on your social media, but social media has the word social in it. Be social about it. You don't have to always be about business when it comes to your social media page. Maybe you're posting funny pictures or memes in relation to real estate. So you can share those, and what will happen is organically someone may find a picture that you've posted on your social media page and they'll share it on their page. Then someone else will see it and they'll share it as well. So what will happen is you'll organically get more views on your Facebook page just because people are sharing this single photo that you thought was funny. So utilizing social media could just boost your social presence so people could find your page, they may like it, and then down the road you could start sharing listings to that page, and if they are in the market, they could reach out to you. And of course, having a website is a great way for customers, whether it's Gen Z or otherwise, to be able to reach out to you. Because again, Gen Z in tune with the internet, they're going to be doing online searches to try to find real estate agents in my area. If you don't have a website, you're not going to populate in that search. So make sure that you've got a website. So if people do searches in your area looking for an agent, be sure you've got that in there and you're going to appear in their search results. So before we wrap up, just want to make a quick note of how My State MLS, New York State MLS, and State Listings Inc. can help you be more in tune with Gen Z and those Gen Z buyers. Well, again, we are a nationwide MLS that's going to offer you search tools to search specifically for your Gen Z buyers, whether they're looking for very specific features. You're going to be able to do that. We incorporate social media, so you're going to be able to do those social media posts for your listings, share them on your Facebook page. We're also going to be able to allow you to enable text leads as well, so people that contact you through the MLS are going to be able to reach you right through your cell phone. And so again, being in tune with technology and having those leads right on your cell phone is a big plus there. And of course, we also offer website services where we can design a brand new website for you to make sure that your presence is online. So when people search for you online, they're going to find that website and see a legitimate, professionally made website that's going to put you in a great light for not only Gen Z, but all buyers alike. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you learned a little bit about Gen Z and what they are looking for when it comes to buying their first home. Be sure to join us for the rest of our Generation RE series throughout the month of March, where next week we're going to be taking a look at Millennials. After that, we're going to be taking a look at Generation X, and then wrapping things up at the end of March, where we're going to be taking a look at Baby Boomers. I thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be talking to you soon.